All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I have the number 6 and 588 thousandths divided by 1 and 8 tenths. Now, again, just like when we were dealing with multiplication, we have to deal with our decimals in some way, shape, or form. You just got to remember the trick. Now, the trick with dividing with decimals is when you have a decimal in your question, as part of your dividend, all you need to do, if there's no decimal in your divisor, is move that decimal point straight up, and that becomes part of your answer. It kind of keeps track of the placement of that decimal point for you. It gets a little trickier when we have a problem like this, where we have a decimal in our divisor as well as our dividend. So what we need to do is our divisor cannot be a decimal when we divide. We need to fix that first. So I'm actually going to take this decimal point and I'm going to move it one spot to the right to make this number 18. I can also do that by doing the same thing over here. So now my decimal point is going to live behind my 5, so it's going to fall right here in my answer. The reason I do this, again, is I'm just messing with powers of 10. If I multiply this by a power of 10 and multiply this by a power of 10, when I divide the two numbers, I'm actually going to get the same answer as I would dividing each one by a power of 10 again. So, again, the trick, fix your decimal in your divisor, and then once that is fixed in your divisor, you've got to do the same thing. So move the same number of places in your dividend, and wherever that decimal point ends up, you pull the decimal point straight up into your answer. All right, now we can run this just like a regular long division problem. Shouldn't be too difficult. 18 into 65, I do not know. Well, of course, it's not going to go into 0. It's going to go 0 times into 6 because, well, if we're thinking of this as 18, can't go into 6 because 6 is too small. I can take 18 out of 65. Now, I don't know how many times off the top of my head. I'm going to guess 3, though, because this is pretty close to 2. And this is between 6 and 7. And it would be 3 for both of those numbers with the number 2. So we'll do this. We'll guess and check. If our number's larger or smaller than 18, we'll know we picked the right number. 3 times 8 is 24. Carry our 2 over. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 more gives me 5. This looks pretty good. Subtract this out, this would be a 1 and this would be a 1. So I do have a pretty large leftover bit, but it is smaller than my 18, so I am good on that step. 11 is smaller than 18, so my next step in my multiplication, or my division process is I'm going to move my next digit down. All right, we're going to do some guess and check. Got to figure out how many 18 times 18 would go into 118. Well, I don't know off the top of my head, but again, this is pretty close to 20. And if we're thinking of this as 120, which is a pretty good estimate, let's see, that would go in roughly 6 times. Because 6 times 2 would be 12, or 120 if we were dealing with tens there. So let's try this out. 6 times 8 is, of course, 8. That was a pretty good guess. And there's a 4 that needs to run over here. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 4 gives me 10. All right, almost perfect, right? That's a 0, this would be a 1. Of course, this would also be a 0. But we are good because this 10 is less than 18. We can bring our next digit down. So we now have 108. And hey, ladies and gentlemen, check it out. 18 times 6 was 108 last time. It'll be the same this time if we multiply it through. So we can just write in our 108 because we know that's going to be the answer of our 6 times 18. Subtract that out, and we have a remainder of 0. Now, since we have a remainder of 0, we don't have to go any further over this way. We already have our decimal point accounted for, so guess what? You are actually done. So 3 and 66/100ths would be your answer here. All right, I hope that was easy enough for you. Just remember, when you're dealing with decimals, your big problem is you have to account for your decimal in your divisor. If it's in the dividend, don't worry about it, just move it straight up. But if you have one in the divisor, just make your divisor into a whole number, fix your dividend by moving the decimal point the same amount of spaces, move it straight up into your answer, and then divide like regular long division. All right, we have just 2 more. We're going to be dealing with some mixed numbers and then the division of fractions. So let's get going with our mixed number 1 next.